I just want to protect him. I just want to like make sure he's okay. I want to make him tough enough, but I want to like make sure he has the skills to, take care of himself and handle people. Like, it was just a different vibe, and, like, that definitely plays into this concept of loving push. It's like, well, if you're protecting them all the time, right? If you got him in this little bubble, how well am I really doing at preparing him for this world?
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Demi Learning Show. This is Gretchen Rowe, and I am so excited to welcome Nicole Thomas to my conversation today. And many of you may well recognize her beautiful smiling face. Nicole, of course, is the math lady, and she teaches online classes for upper level math and now lower level math as well. We're not going to talk about math today. We're going to talk about something that's closer and more personal to both our hearts. And I'm going to let Nicole introduce herself and then we'll get started in earnest. Nicole,
All right, sounds great. Well, I was laughing when you said Nicole Thomas. I was like, I wonder if people actually know my last name, you know?
I actually did call you that this weekend, and the people in the booth with me we were at a conference together, and someone went, "Who?" I said,
Yeah.
"Math lady." "Oh, yeah, yeah, I know who that is."
Makes me laugh sometimes when I remember thinking, "Was that a good will that stick?" Well, I guess it stuck because they don't really know what my last name is, so well, hi, everyone. Again, I'm Nicole Thomas, Nicole the Math Lady, but today I am mom, right? I am, a mom now of 2 children. My oldest is turning 21 next week. That's a whole other webinar, but today, we're gonna be talking about my relationship with my 15-year-old. His name is Justin. I know if you have heard anything about my story, you might have heard that at age 3, Justin was diagnosed with autism. And, we'll talk a little bit about that whole process. But essentially, we've been on a journey in the last few months now that he's 15 to really look at my role as the mom in preparing him for the world. And I've like learned some things. So what I'm going to tell people is, I generally kind of have it together as Nicole the math lady, right? I can stand at the board and like talk math, and like this I am a woman in process. I'm a woman in process figuring out how to best equip her son to take on the world. And the name that we talked about is the loving push, right? So, really about like I had to examine who I was being and taking care of him, and was I doing enough to push him? So we'll talk about that because I kind of found out that like maybe there's some things I could do, and I've been implementing some of those things in the last few months, and it really has changed our household. It's changed my life and it's changed his.
And Nicole, I know this really strikes a chord with many parents because it doesn't have to be an autism diagnosis. It can be anxiety, it can be ADD, it can be a variety of diagnoses. But as moms in particular, we want to protect our children. We don't want the big bad world to beat them up. But it's a fine line between knowing they're not going to always be in our household and knowing when to begin that process. So what made you think that you had to start something different?
Yeah. Well, it's even funny that you talked about like the diagnosis, right? Like I know there's some people who have a diagnosis. And again, like you don't have to have a diagnosis to be in on this conversation, but I'm going to talk about it from that perspective. Some people would say, "Well, do you even share the diagnosis? And do you not share it?" I just remember when he was 3 and doing things that looked like he was being disobedient. That's what it looks like from the outside, right? Like, why isn't this kid listening to you? I was like the town caller. I was like, "Oh, by the way, he has autism." Like, that was, like, my thing, and I used to look at why did I feel the need to always say that to people? Why did I feel the need to explain his behavior? And it came from that, like, that innate mothering instinct to protect. I felt that, well, if people knew what was going on, they wouldn't look with such disdain if he was acting out or having a meltdown. Like, I wanted to, and I realized that, like, during this period of, like, him being born till now, just people's awareness of, like, what autism and other learning disabilities are has grown so much. Like when we first started, I didn't know what it was. I had to Google it, which was a scary thing in and of itself. So just, that urge to protect is there for all of our kids, right? But I even looked at how do I treat my daughter Sydney and how did I treat my son Justin? And it's interesting because my daughter, who's very similar to me, even though she will not like to say that in public, she's very similar to me.
Give her 10 years, Nicole, then it'll be fine.
But, like, I remember always thinking in my brain, I wanted to make her strong. I wanted to make her tough, and I wanted to make her be able to conquer the world, and, like, that's how I raised her. And, like, with Justin, the way when I think about it in my brain, it always was, I just wanna protect him. I just wanna, like, make sure he's okay. I wanna make him tough enough, but I wanna, like, make sure he has the skills to, take care of himself and handle people. Like, it was just a different vibe, and, like, that definitely plays into this concept of loving push. It's like, well, if you're protecting them all the time, right? If you got him in this little bubble, how well am I really doing at preparing him for this world?
And if you have an autism diagnosis and you've seen one child with autism, you've seen one child with autism.
That is the truth,
It's
right?
vastly different for different kids.
Yeah. It's called a spectrum for a reason, right? But I even look at, like, in my work as Nicole the math lady, we have a lot of students, as I'm sure you guys do as well, with different, diagnoses, and I always look at, like, okay, well, when people come and they're like, well, this will this work for my kid? And the first thing I always say is, I don't know. Because I don't like when people tell me that this was designed for your kid and then it doesn't work with my kid, like my kid is unique, as all children are. So I always tell people, you know what? You got to try it out. You got to see for yourself because you and your child are the only ones who are going to know because they're so unique, you
Right.
know?
Exactly. I think it makes a tremendous difference when we can empower the parents to do the work to figure out if it works for their kids. The parents that I get frustrated with are the ones that ask if it will work, but then they won't work their end of the stick, so to speak, to make it work. So
Yeah.
today we're talking to the parents who are working the correct end of the stick.
Right, that's right. Yeah, and as I said, like, so the loving push, let's talk about that title. I, was my son attends a social skills group like on a Friday. So the moms, while the kids are in the social skills class, the moms, we used to get our little pop-up chairs and sit outside the room and then just talk because, just being able to connect with other moms, and hear their stories, you kind of just find community. And then somebody had brought up this book called The Loving Push, and I was like, "Oh, I have not heard about that." And it was written by Temple Grandin, who is an autism advocate, a woman with autism, and a psychologist. Her name was, I wrote it down, Deborah Moore. Want to give her credit too. And it was about us as the parents. And sometimes we need to give our kids a loving push, like that whole protective thing that maybe we're not setting them up for the best success by putting on those like white gloves. So it really like it was like I think a 6 or 7 week course where we just looked at all of these different areas to see how are we helping them? Are we preparing them for the world? Where do we need to give them a little bit of a push? And I remember thinking, "Nah, this is gonna be okay." Like, I'm pretty good. I push him out there. And then I was like, I think there's some more things I could really do to prepare him for this world that I hadn't been doing before." So we can definitely chat about some of those things.
Absolutely. Dr. Temple Grandin was a guest on the webinar series last August, and that was probably one of the richest experiences I had all summer because she would get herself into an airport and be frustrated because there was a plane delay. So she'd go through her phone list and call me. And so I got to talk to her personally on at least 4 occasions. And she is the writing in her books is the person she is. And just love that. I think it's so fascinating. So tell us, what was the first thing you learned in that book that maybe needed a tweak?
Hmm. So it's funny because
Or
again,
maybe I should ask the question differently.
okay.
What stood out to you the most
Mm,
about needing to be tweaked.
mm.
Now, he was 14 when you read this book, right?
Yeah, he was yeah, 14, maybe just turned 15. And I remember thinking that, well, I'm gonna give you like an example of something that happened during the class, or during the 6 weeks of the class. So we decided to sign up for a coding class because again, one of my things is I'm going to expose him to things that I think, could be great careers for him, things that he's interested in. So, he's interested in like building games. He builds games on Roblox, right? And like he builds these like incredible games. So I thought, let's get him some coding experience. Okay. So of course he was like, no, no, I don't want to, I don't do Justin, you're coding already. Okay. So, first and second week, I sat with him in the room. I wasn't on camera, he was on camera, and I sat with him. And the reason I sat with him is because I knew from an attention standpoint, right? Like, ADHD is part of autism. Like, he's not going to be able to sit. It was an hour and a half class on a Monday, Wednesday, and then 3 hours on Saturday. Okay. So I just knew like attention and staying in attention in the class was going to be a challenge. But I noticed by, like, the 3rd week, he wasn't really like, he would pay attention for 2 seconds and then drift. And then I'd be like, "Justin, Justin, go back to the class." Pay attention for a couple minutes and then drift. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's gonna be like a long" it was a 3-month course. It's gonna be a long course, okay? And then I noticed on the one of the Saturday mornings, I kept saying, "Justin, go back. Justin, just" and he just kinda, like, wouldn't. And I was like, "Wait a second. This kid knows that when it's time to do the work, if he hasn't paid attention, he knows I'm gonna help him." And that's what I was doing. I was like, I wanted him to succeed in the class. I wanted to, okay, remember they said this. Like I wanted to help him. And I realized in that moment that he was relying on me to do it with him or for him.
And you know what? That scenario you paint there is true for so many parents, whether our children have a diagnosis or not.
Right. So I remember thinking in the class, it was talking about learned helplessness. I was like, oh, hmm. So I said, okay, I know I can't stay in this room. Like, I know I have to leave right now, but we're in the middle of this 3-hour class. I think what's going to happen is a meltdown. So I said, Justin, you sat through class. The teacher is there. If you have questions, you need to ask them. I'm going to leave now. Now, as you imagine, my heart is like, I'm leaving the room. And I'm like, I have to let him be in the class on his own. He has to know that mom's not here to pay attention for me. I have to pay attention myself. So, what started to happen as I was leaving the room is, like, the meltdown started to come. And, like, Justin's meltdowns are not like the, like, anger kind, they're like the sadness kind, like, it's, like, weepy, And my kid's, like, big, like, he's 6 foot, like, he's a big boy, So and he's, like, starting to cry, and I'm like, "Nicole, keep walking, put one foot in front of the other," and I closed the door behind me, and I went to my room, and I literally stood outside the door like, "Am I gonna go back? Am I gonna go back? I should go back," and I'm like, "No, this is a safe place. The teacher is there. If he has a question, he needs to ask the teacher." And I said that before he left. And I waited about 5 minutes. It's like all I could handle. And then I ran back to the room and I put my ear to the door, and there he was talking on Zoom to the teacher. There's probably like about 8 or 9 kids in the class. And he was having the teacher re-explain something to him. And in that moment, I was like, that's what they're talking about. Like, that's what you're talking about. Like, he would not have done that. He would have waited for me. I would have jumped in. I would have worked with him. Now, I would have done it in a very teacherly way, right? Like, I would have asked him questions and,
You can't take
facilitated.
the teacher out of you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I would have been a good teacher about it. But as far as being a parent who is allowing him to succeed or fail. Like, I had to be willing to let him fail. And, like, especially if you have a kid that is gonna have a meltdown, you do everything to stop a meltdown from happening.
Right, of course.
And I realize I have to let the meltdown happen because if without the meltdown happening, he is not gonna say, "No, I'm responsible for this." Like, I have to listen. Like, I have to do the project. And, like, that one day while I'm standing outside his door with like my ear, like the smile came on my face like, oh, if you let him, if you get out of the way long enough, he's gonna rise. So guess what, Nicole? You got to get out of the way.
Oh my gosh.
Ugh, it's hard. It's hard.
That is a mom in almost any situation with a child that's older than, say, 7 or 8, in a particularly in a novel environment, we have that tendency to want to protect our children, particularly in the world of gentle parenting now. We want to be the safe space for our children, but does that help them mature?
Let me give you part 2 of the story. Part 2 of the story happened a few weeks later. So, at this point, he started sitting in the class by himself. He realized, "Listen, I'm gonna have to listen to this instructor. I'm gonna have to deal with whatever attention things are going on in my brain." And I'm not saying it was perfect. It definitely wasn't. We definitely had to rewatch videos. It took us longer, but I realized getting the project done was not the end goal. Getting the for him to get that I have to listen and participate, that was the goal because that's what he needs in life. He does not need to do well on this project in coding. Do you know what I mean? Okay, but fast forward about 5 weeks, and this was just, like, a couple weeks ago, and it was, a Saturday morning, and, sometimes they have homework for class and sometimes they don't. And all of a sudden, I get a text, "Please come up." And I was like, "Okay." So I come running up the steps, and I open the door, and my son is in full-blown meltdown on the Zoom in front of the class. So, of course, as a mom, you're just like your heart is breaking for your child, and you're like, "Okay, calm down. What is wrong?" And what happened was he had a homework assignment. He was challenged by it, and he did not think that I should go and ask for some help. I should go ask my mom, I should go ask the teacher, so he got to class, and that's when he realized he didn't have the assignment. And, like, in our house, like, we do assignments. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was that kind of kid, like, you never showed up to school without an assignment done, and he is a bit the same way, so he is now having a bit of, like, a panic attack because he doesn't have his assignment done. And I said to him essentially, he started to have the meltdown before, it was his turn to present. You're supposed to present. And I said to him, I said, "Look, I can't help you right now. Like, I don't know what the assignment was." He wanted me to help him, like, do it really fast. Like, "Can you just help me do it really fast, like, right here?" And I said, "Honey, I can't help you. Like, 1, I don't know what you did in class. But 2, you didn't do it. So you're gonna have to let the teacher know. You have to tell them, I didn't do it. I forgot. I didn't ask for help. I was confused. You have to explain. You're gonna have to like, express yourself, which, was one of our challenges." And then that's when the meltdown came, when he did express himself, and then the full meltdown came, and I realized as hard as this was for me to sit there, this was something he needed to learn as well. He needed to learn, like, yep, there's a consequence when you don't do your homework. And again, the mother and me wanted to save him. And like, if I'd have known what that was, I maybe sat there with him and tried to help. But it's like, no, that I don't need him to get the A in coding. I need him to get, oh, there's consequences for when I don't do things, And again,
There's other layers to those consequences. There's consequences to not seeking help, not think planning your time, not recognizing that your decision or lack of decision affects other people. All of those things are very real world adult experiences.
right. And here's the thing, I wish I could tell you in that moment, I went back to the room and he was fine. He wasn't. Like, we had to sit out the rest of the class. My day was done for the like, after I held it together for him, I went back to my room and, like, waterworks, 'cause I just was like, we hate seeing our children in pain. But I knew he has to start having I have to get out of the way for him to be able to have these experiences, and at least he can do it here where at least I can run and give the hug afterwards. But I can't prevent him from having those experiences. So that was definitely a huge part. I felt like I pushed him when it came to academics and I pushed him, but like I never wanted to push him, in the area of like having like real interactions and like feeling pain and feeling upset. It's like
Sure, I think one of those things is, all that you have described is the gray area of relationship that we as mothers want our children to navigate well, but they don't really experience the navigation till something goes sideways.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's the hard part. Like, again, I can push them on the, okay, you can do math. Yes. You're going to learn how to read. Yes. But it's like, I always wanted to stop them from any pain, So, like, I'll see it, for example, I'll see parents who'll call me, or I'll see in our workshops who are like, I don't like, I see them get so frustrated when they're doing their math. So we do fewer practice problems, and I'll be like, I'm telling you, it sounds counterintuitive, but you actually have to do more. You got to push more, because if you actually do more practice problems, you'll get them over the hump that they actually get. I can do it. So my job is not to make it easy. My job is to instill confidence. And like instilling confidence, I've got to make you do it for yourself,
Right.
It's hard. It is not easy.
But it's probably for you much easier in that relationship between student and instructor than it is between mother and child.
Oh, absolutely. Absolute like, I can tutor anybody's kid and, like, push them lovingly. Like, that's, like, the sure, but when it's your own, again, you just that feeling of, like, you wanna push, but we wanna stop them from feeling pain, and it's like, I realize pain is part of life.
Sure, absolutely.
If I'm gonna stop him from feeling pain when he actually feels pain out there in the streets, he's not gonna know how to handle it.
Right. Well, so how many weeks ago was it that you did this? Because this is relatively a new experience for you.
Well, that full meltdown experience was 2 Saturdays ago. That was the
Okay.
full
All
meltdown.
right. Mm.
And we started that course about maybe I think it was maybe 7 or 8 weeks, So that's when we met every week tackling a new thing. Like one of the things we tackled, I don't know if I'm talking to folks out there, but we tackled computer use. There's a lot of kids, period, but particularly a lot of kids on the spectrum where, you know, being social is difficult. So they end up going into their room and turning on the technology and then like finding this whole world in technology. And I remember thinking, like, my daughter, I did not let her participate, like, in any of, like, the chats, for example, on these games. I was like, "Nope, you're not allowed to do that." But I'm embarrassed to tell you that I did let my son, and I'll tell you why. I remember thinking it's where he found, quote, unquote, "friends." And that's what he would say, like, because he had a harder time socializing, that he would find friends online. And then through this class, I realized, were those really friends? Like, he really didn't have friends. I allowed him there because it was safe. Like, I could still read the chat. I could still see what people were saying. I could definitely, be like, that is not polite. We don't say, I could do that. But like, really, the push was to get him off of the computer and get him into the world and like push him to be social.
And I think just described a scenario, whether your child has a diagnosis or not, so many of us as moms are struggling with right now. You know, COVID, if that, what's the word I want? Exacerbated
Yeah.
tendency to secret ourselves in spaces and now trying to step out of that. It's hard for everybody. Were you able to talk about that later? I know it's hard to get any teenage boy to talk about their feelings, but were you able to talk about that later?
You mean the meltdown, you mean?
Yeah, the
Or
whole experience of not reaching out for help in advance and then panicking and then feeling
yeah.
like you couldn't reel it back in.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because again, I remember thinking, I tried to talk about it in that moment. Yeah, that wasn't working. I was like, let the boy just have his meltdown, right? And I think we waited like a day or 2 to have the conversation about like, okay, so what happened? You have something that you have to turn into class. Like, what happened? And then he explained, he was like, I didn't know how to do it. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, what are some things we could have done? And he was like, "Well, I could have asked you." And I'm like, "Yeah, you could have asked me. And if I didn't know, what could we have done then?" He's like, "Well, we could have watched the video." We could have watched the video. So you knew those things, but you didn't, right? Like, so you made a choice. He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well, what choice did you make?" Well, his choice was to go play video games instead of actually like handle it. So I'm like, "Well, that's a good thing to notice, right? Like, it's not that you were helpless. It wasn't there wasn't anybody to help you. Because I also don't I don't wanna do this learned helplessness, like, I just can't do no. You had a choice, you made a choice. You'd rather go play your video games than actually, go get help for the project you knew that you had to turn it. So at least we were able to, like, unearth because what I wanted him to walk away with is, "You're powerful. You get to choose." You get to choose if you show up to class without an assignment. It's not that I didn't know how to do it, I can't do the assignment. No, that doesn't fly in our house, okay? Diagnosis or not, that doesn't fly. It's, "Oh, it was hard for me. I'm going to turn this in. What do I need to do to get me from here to there?" Now, again, talk about the learned helplessness. Before, I would have been right there. I would have been like, "Okay, on Monday, we're gonna sit down, we're gonna do this assignment, we're gonna do it together." And I don't do that anymore. I said, "Justin, your coding homework, how's that going?" And then he has to like, oh, and then he has to walk upstairs and do it himself, like, rather than me making sure everything is perfectly fine. I have flipped, and trust me, like, I was a really good student, right? So it was difficult for me to, possibly let him go to class without having everything all figured out and reviewed, and when I
How
first started
hard is that for you? Because that's such a paradigm shift for a mom, particularly with a child who has some struggles in learning.
I mean, so again, in my house growing up, like we sat down every night. We were really strict around education, right? Like my family was from the Caribbean. When we came here, education was it, like school was it. That's what we did. So I thought I was doing good parenting by sitting down with him all the time, making sure his work was done, making sure, but the truth is I had taken all the power away from him. And he was getting it all done, but there was no power for him, and at the end of the day, sadly, one of the things I think about more so with him than with my daughter is, I'm not gonna be here one day. Yeah, I'm not gonna be here one day to take care of him. Who's gonna take care of him? It's like, well, you gotta equip him to take care of himself. Now, I should be doing that with my daughter too, but she's a little me. She's, like, off and running. So it makes me think, okay, what's the point here? Like, is the point to have, like, all the grades perfect and have everything his excelling on paper, but I'm got my hand in it? Or is it okay to, like, let him fail a little bit and let him, like, dig deep down and, like, pull out who he is? And it might not be as perfect as it was when I was in school with all my little bows and everything tied nicely. Like, it has to be true for him, 'cause that's what I'm trying to train. I'm trying to train the ability for him to be on his own in this world.
Absolutely. I have been reading a book by Jennifer Breheny Wallace that is called, I think it's called Good Enough.
Mm,
And it's about the achievement culture we have inadvertently fostered by wanting the best for our children, and in many instances, driving forward with what we think is best without ever including them in that conversation. And boy, it's hard. That's really hard. I mean, I saw myself in things that I didn't even realize. And I mean, my youngest child's 19, so it's not like I'm dealing with little kids now. But I was like, oh, I started having to make a few notes where I'm going to have to circle back to some kids and go, do you remember? Probably don't, but
yeah.
I do, and that's the important part. Nicole, I can't believe we only have 6 minutes left in this conversation because, man, you have gone deep, but encouraging in everything that you've had to say. So I want to ask you this question that we talked about beforehand. What is the best way to address when a child says, "I'm stupid," particularly if a parent has never said they are stupid?
Yeah. So first of all, like, it just breaks your heart, right? Because, like, they either made that decision on their own, or did somebody say that to them? Like, the fact again, being somebody who just always wants to protect, it breaks your heart, right? So, so I'm trying to think if like, I've never had that moment with Justin, but that's not true. I've actually had a moment with him where I remember he was just like, I can't learn it. Like, I can't learn how to do this, And the first thing I just had to do was acknowledge his feelings. Like, I get it. Like, it is hard. Sometimes things just seem like make his feelings real, like for him, because they are real, for him. It is hard. I can't imagine what it's like you know? So, the first thing I just do is support. It's just let them know it is
You're
okay.
validating how he feels. Yeah,
Yeah, like, how you're feeling, sometimes it sucks, and I get it. Um, and then I'm gonna let him know, "I know that's how you feel, but that's not how I see you." And I'm gonna let him know all the ways that he is amazing. I am really like, sometimes, autism is not an easy thing. It is not. But I don't know that I would change my life for anything. I would not change him because we've got to see things that I know the rest of the world does not get to see. We get to see how kind he is, how sweet he is, how funny he is. He says things because he's so like black and white. He says things that are just funny. And I just remind him how unique and special he is, that like you're perfect exactly as you are, even exactly as you are, meaning even with like, people would never realize this, but I stuttered as a kid. I speak for a living and I stuttered as a kid, you know? So it's like, listen, like, yeah, like things are in our path. They make us stronger, but they do not predict who we're going to be. So the thing I know about you or this child is, you know, what I love is that you come back and you try and you come back and you try. And at the end of the day, that's what I care about. I don't care about the information that needs to be shoved into your brain. I care that you come back and you try. So can you show me that? You know? So I look at like what is special and unique about that kid and let them know because not everybody is as I said, I did really well in school, sitting down, facing forward. That was my thing. That is not my son's thing. So what's he great at? You know, again, that boy can code this pressure luck game. I don't even know what he's doing half the time. He's showing me, and I'm like, wow. There's different ways to win in this world. So help them find that way.
sure.
You know,
Sure. Because that really is the mandate for us as parents is to figure out what the combination is to release the creativity and the motivation in every child.
right? And isn't that the exciting part, right? Like that says my daughter who just walked in. I always told her, I was like, you know what? This for me, this world is about finding what you love to do every day. I get to wake up and create every day.
Mhm.
That I'm really blessed to be able to do that. I want you to be able to do that. So go figure it out. Go figure
Sure.
it out. Yeah, you got to feed yourself and all of that at some point. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But like be in pursuit of figuring out the talents that were given to you and how you can express those talents in this world.
I had a friend who many years ago told me, the reason trapeze artists are successful is because they throw their heart over the bar first,
Mhm.
and then the rest of them has to follow.
Oh, I love that. That's scary, but
I know, I know. Nicole, I wanna thank you for this time. I feel like we just scratched the surface here. I might have to drag you back in for another conversation because, well, absolutely, after the press your luck game plays, we wanna know what happened. All of us are now invested in this amazing experience that you've been able to curate for your son.
yeah, I will have video to share. So thanks, come back.
Terrific. We'll do it. Thank you so much for joining me today. Everyone, thank you for allowing us into your living room. It's always a pleasure to come and share time with you, and we don't take it lightly. We appreciate that you allow us to come and share these conversations with you, and we'll look forward to doing it again soon. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thanks again for joining us. We're glad to be a part of your educational community. You can help us grow our community even more by rating, reviewing, and subscribing to the show wherever you may be hearing this. Don't forget that you can access the show notes and watch a recording at demilearning.com/show or on our YouTube channel. We'll see you again next time. Until then, keep building strong foundations for lifelong learning.